Hey guys, what's happening? I'm Cal, and in today's Swift and Xcode tutorial we're going to be building a game of Connect 4. In a previous tutorial we built a game of Tic-Tac-Toe, and that was quite a simple project just because it's quite a simple game. And I would really say that was a beginner programming project. Today we've probably got more of a beginner to intermediate project. We're going to learn about how to use collection views as well as obviously some game logic. So stick around and yeah, let's build Connect 4. Cool, so creating a new Swift and Xcode project. This is an iOS app. We're going to call it Connect 4 tutorial. Selecting our interface as Storyboard and our programming language is Swift. We're going to just hit create and finish. And firstly, we're going to head into the main storyboard. We're going to drag in a collection view. We're going to center it horizontally and vertically in the safe area, as well as giving it equal widths, as well as an aspect ratio. We're going to head in and modify those constraints. So the multiplier is going to be 1 for our equal widths. A Connect 4 board has 6 rows and 7 columns. So that's why we're going to give our aspect ratio 7:6. Next, we're going to give our collection view a background color of blue. So I'm just going to head in and say background accent color. And we're going to say estimate size to none. And now we're going to drag in an image view onto our collection view cell. The image, we're just going to type circle. And we're going to use this circle fill image. We're going to give it some constraints. So center horizontally and vertically, as well as equal widths and equal heights. And we're going to change the tint to white, and then just go in and change the multipliers to be 1. So equal widths and equal heights of our collection view cell. Now we're going to drag in a label. This is just going to keep track of our current turn. So we're just going to call this current turn, center horizontally and a little bit of space to the top. We're going to make the font size a little bit bigger and bold. And then we're just going to click on our image, copy and paste that below, change the font to this system yellow and just set it below our turn label. So width and aspect ratio, we're going to give the width equal to 50 and the aspect ratio is 1:1 and just a little bit of space to our current turn label. We're going to right click on our collection view and drag to our view controller. So it's going to be our data source as well as our delegate. And then we're going to say Command N to create a new Swift file. We're going to call this board cell, and this is going to import the UIKit. We're going to create a class calling it board cell, which is of type UI collection view cell. And now we can head back into our main storyboard, click on our collection view cell and assign the class to that class we just created. So board cell. And you can see our view controller is already linked up with our view controller class. Now we're going to create a second pane, just open up our board cell and right click and drag from our image. And we're just going to call this image. We're going to head into our view controller. We're going to create an outlet for our collection view, just calling it collection view, as well as we're going to create an outlet for our turn image and just calling that turn image. So we can close off the double pane now, and we're going to head into our view controller Swift. We're just going to do a little bit of tidying up, and we're going to say Command N to create a new Swift file. We're going to call this one BoardItem. We're going to create another Swift file calling it board, and a third one calling it turn. So we're going to start with our BoardItem first. We're going to import the UIKit. BoardItem just needs to keep track of each cell, what the current tile is, and what the position is. So we're just going to create an enum calling it tile with the case red, yellow, and empty. So they're the 3 options that a tile could be. And then we're going to create a struct calling it BoardItem with a variable index path, which is non-optional, as well as a variable tile, which is also non-optional. And then we're just going to create a couple of functions that are more convenience methods, really. So we're just going to create a function calling it yellow tile, and we're just going to say if our tile is our tile yellow, then we're going to return true. We're going to do the same thing for our red tile, as well as one for our empty tile. And just need to give all those equal signs the second equals. Next, we're going to create a function calling it tile color, which returns a UI color. And this is just going to say if it's a red tile, we're going to return color red. And if it's a yellow tile, we're going to return our system yellow. Otherwise, we can assume that it's an empty tile and therefore we can return white. Cool, so now we're going to head into our board file and we're going to populate an array with our board items. So we're just going to create a variable calling it board, which is equal to a 2-dimensional array of board items. We're going to create a function calling it reset board, which is basically going to populate our board. Firstly, we're going to remove all, even though we haven't populated yet, but that'll come in handy later. We're going to say for row in 0 to 5, meaning for how many rows there are, so 6. A variable calling it row array is equal to an array of board items. And then we're going to say for column in 0 to 6, so meaning 7 columns. We're going to let our index path equal to index path init. Our item and section, we're going to give our item our column and our section our row. And then we're going to say board item is equal to a new board item. Our index path, we're going to pass through our index path, and we're just going to set the tile to tile empty. So basically we're creating a full empty board, and then we're going to append our board item to our row array. Cool, so now in our view controller, we can call our reset board function. We also need to set our collection view width and height because we haven't actually specified that anywhere. So we're going to do that programmatically. So just going to create a function calling it set cell width and height. Our width is going to be equal to collection view frame size width, and we're going to divide that by 9. So get the width of the current view and then divide that by 9. And then we're going to say height is equal to our collection view frame size height divided by 6. And then we're going to say let flow layout equal to collection view layout as collection view flow layout. And then our flow layout, we're going to say item size is equal to a new CG size, just giving it a width and height of our width and height. And now we can say with our view control class, it's going to be of type UI collection view delegate, as well as our UI collection view data source, which we've already linked in our main storyboard. But now we're just implementing the members. So we're just going to add the protocol stubs for our cell for item at index path, as well as we're going to override the number of sections, which we're just going to return board count. But then we're going to override the number of items in section, which we're going to return the board, and then the section out of our board, and then count. And I'm just going to quickly change this to CV to make it all fit a little bit quicker rather than collection view. And now for our cell for item at index path, let cell equal to CV, so our collection view, DQ reusable cell with reuse identifier ID cell. And we're actually just, while we're here, we're going to head in and assign that reuse identifier to our board cell. So our collection view cell, so just pasting in that ID cell, so those strings need to match. And then we're going to say for index path, we've already got the index path, so we'll just pass that through as our board cell type. And then we're just going to return our cell. Before we return our cell, we're going to say let board item equal to get board item, which we haven't actually created this function yet, so that passes through an index path. So we're going to go into our board class and just create a function calling it get board item, which receives our index path. And then we're just going to return, based on our index path, get out of our multi-dimensional array. We're going to get the index path and the section and then the index path item. Cool, and now we can head back into our view controller and we can say cell image tint color is equal to our board item tile color. And then I'm just going to command click to go back through to our get board item function, because I forgot to make it return our board item. And there's also just one thing we forgot to do in our board below our column for loop. We just need to say board append our row array. Cool, so I think we're ready to build and run this and see if we've got an empty board. You can see that I've got a nice grid of 7 by 6. Cool, so that's looking good. Next, we're going to work on placing the tiles. We're going to head into our turn Swift file and we're going to import the UIKit, as well as creating an enum, calling this one turn, which has a case of red and a case of yellow, so it's either red or yellow's turn. And then we're going to say current turn is equal to turn yellows. And then we're going to say function toggle turn, which receives a UI image view of our turn image, and we're going to say if it's yellow's turn, we want to create a function calling it yellow's turn. So we're just going to say if it's yellow's turn, we're just going to return if current turn is equal to turn yellow. And we're going to do the same thing for red, so we're just going to create a function, this is just for convenience, saying if it's the red's turn. So yeah, if it's our yellow turn, we're going to set our current turn equal to turn red, as well as the turn image tint color to red. And then we're basically just going to do the opposite if it's red turn. So we're just going to say current turn is equal to yellow, and the turn image tint color is equal to yellow, or our system yellow. Cool, now we're going to create one more function calling it current turn tile. It's going to return the tile enum based on whoever's turn it is. And so we're just going to say if it's the yellow turn, return tile yellow, otherwise turn tile red. And if you've never seen, this is just called I think it's called a ternary operator, where it's an inline if statement. So it's just saying if yellow turn, execute the first chunk of code, otherwise return the other chunk of code. And then we're just going to copy and paste that down, but instead of returning a tile, we're going to return a UI color and return our system yellow and our red. And then we're also going to do one more, which returns a string, which is our victory message. So we're just going to say yellow wins or red wins based on our yellow turn. So I think that's it for our turn file. We're going to head back into the view controller now and override the did select item at index path. So this is when a collection view cell is tapped. And we're just going to say let column equal to our index path item. And then we're going to say if board item is equal to get lowest empty board item, giving it our column. So basically when you click on any cell, we want to get the lowest empty board item, because when you've put in a tile, it's going to fall to the bottom. So we're going to create that function. We're going to create it in our board Swift file. So yeah, get lowest empty board item, receiving a column, and it's going to return an optional board item. We're just going to return nil at the bottom above that for row in 0 to 5. And then we're going to put it in brackets and say reverse. So go through it backwards. We're going to say board item is equal to our board at our row and our column. And if our board item is an empty tile, we're going to return that board item. While we're here, we're going to create another function just calling it update board with board item. So this just receives our board item and updates our board with that board item. So if we've changed the tile in our board item, we're just going to give it this function so that it can update our board array. So we're just going to say board at index path section and index path item is equal to our board item. And now we're going to say if let cell is equal to our collection view cell for item at our board item index path as our board cell. We're going to say cell image tint color is equal to our current turn color. We're going to say board item tile is equal to our current turn tile. And then we're going to update board with our board item, just passing it through our board item. And then we're going to toggle the turn, so giving it our turn image. I think we're ready to build and run this again. And let's see if we can place a tile. So you can see that we're placing a bunch of tiles. Current turn image is flip-flopping between red and yellow, and we're placing one red tile and then a yellow tile. They're all going to the bottom, so that's all looking pretty good. You can see though, if we get 4 in a row, it's not going to do anything, or if the board gets full, it's not going to do anything either. So what we're going to do first is say if our board is full, we want to obviously reset the board, meaning that no one's won. So we're just going to create a function calling it board is full, which returns a boolean. And to do this, we're just going to go through all of the rows in our board and then all of the columns in that row and say if that column is empty, meaning we've found an empty tile, then we return false. Otherwise, if you've gone through everything and you haven't found an empty tile, we're going to return true. So now if our board is full, we're going to create a result alert. So we're going to create another function calling it result alert, which receives a title. And the title we're going to pass through for this one is draw. And we're going to say let message is equal to, we're actually going to implement a little scorecard as well. So just creating a variable red score and yellow score, which are both equal to 0. And we're going to say string value of our red score as well as the string value of our yellow score. That's our message. We're going to say AC is equal to UI alert controller, giving it a title of our title, a message of our message, and our preferred style is action sheet. We're going to say AC add action, so we're going to add an action to our alert controller, so we're just going to give it a button of reset. The style is going to be default, and the handler, we're just going to say self and then in. And inside our action, we're going to firstly, if they hit reset, we're going to reset the board, and then we also need to reset all of our cells. So we're just going to create that function below. Populate our reset cells function. We're just going to say self present, pass it through our AC, so our alert controller. Animated, we're going to give it true, and that's all we need to pass through. And we just need to say self for our reset cells. So in our reset cells, we're just going to say for cell in our collection view visible cells as our board cell type, we're going to say cell image tint color is equal to white. So just set all the cells back to white. And then before our board is full, before we check to see if it's a draw, we're actually going to check to see if victory has been achieved. So we're going to create another function in our board Swift file, which also returns a boolean, and we're just going to return false for now. And if victory is achieved, and inside that, we're going to say if it's the yellow's turn, yellow score plus equal to 1, yellow's 1. Red turn, red score plus equal to 1. We're just going to say result alert and just giving it our current turn victory message, and that can actually go outside of this ifs block. Now the final thing left to do is just determine whether or not victory has been achieved. So we're going to go in and modify this function. We're going to copy and paste it down and just create a function calling it horizontal victory. And instead of returning false for our victory achieved, we're just going to return our horizontal victory. And we're going to say for row in our board, we're going to create a variable calling it consecutive, which is equal to 0. And then for column in our row, we're going to say if our column tile is equal to the current turn tile, we can add 1 to consecutive, meaning that we've found at least 1 in a row. And then we're going to say if consecutive is greater than or equal to 4, we're going to return true, meaning victory has been achieved. Otherwise, if we find a tile that's not the current turn tile, we're going to set our consecutive back to 0. Let's build and run this and see if our horizontal victory is working. So we're just going to add in a bunch of tiles, and I'm going to make yellow win on this bottom horizontal. You can see that our vertical hasn't worked, but our horizontal has, and you can see yellow wins, and it's updated our yellow score. And then when I hit reset, it resets the board. Cool, so next we're going to say or our horizontal victory, we're going to say or vertical victory, and then we're going to create a function calling it vertical victory, which also returns boolean. And we're just going to return false at the bottom, and then say for column in 0 to our board count, to the size of our board. If check vertical column, which we're going to create a new function which passes through that column. And if that's true, we're going to return true, otherwise you just keep going. We're going to create that function which returns boolean and receives our column. So our column is of type int. And we'll just rename it to column to check. We're going to return false at the bottom, steal our consecutive variable, and then we're going to say for row in board, if our row at our column to check tile is equal to our current turn tile, we're going to do exactly what we've been doing in here. So add 1 to consecutive, and if consecutive is greater than 4, we're going to return true. Otherwise, we're going to set consecutive back to 0. Let's build and run this now and see if our vertical victory is working. You can see we've got yellow wins on the vertical 4, and we'll check it for red as well. Cool, so the final victory condition is obviously a diagonal victory. We're going to create another or and just create a function calling it diagonal victory. Copy and paste our vertical victory and renaming it to diagonal victory. And instead of checking for a vertical column, we're going to check for a diagonal column. But we're also going to pass through 2 more booleans, and the first one we're going to say true and true. So our check for diagonal column is going to receive our column to check, which is an int, receive a boolean, which we're going to call move up, as well as a reverse rows, which is a boolean as well. So what we're going to do now is just return false. And what we need to do is actually call this function 4 times. And each time we're going to send through a different combination of our 2 booleans. So you see the top one's 2 trues, and then true false, and then false true, and then false false. So in our check diagonal column, we're going to steal our consecutive equal to 0 again. We're also going to create a variable calling it moving column, which is equal to our column to check. And then we're going to say for row in our board reversed, if moving column is less than our row count and our moving column is greater than 0, meaning it's a valid column, that it's actually on our board, we're going to say if row at moving column tile is equal to our current turn tile, we're going to add 1 to our consecutive, and if it's greater than equal to 4, we're going to return true. Otherwise, we're going to set our consecutive back to 0. And I just need to put a little space in here between our 0 and our greater than and equal to. And then we're going to say moving column is equal to another ternary operator. So if we're moving up, we're going to add 1 to our moving column. Otherwise, we're going to minus 1 from our moving column. Checking for both left diagonal as well as a right diagonal. And then we're going to say if reverse rows, we're going to do what we've been doing. Otherwise, we're going to copy and paste everything down, which I know is sort of bad practice, but we're going to remove the board reverse. So we'll go through the board forwards this time, and then we'll build and run this, and you should be able to get all sorts of diagonal victories achieved. So we're just doing 1 to the left, and now let's do 1 to the right. Yeah, so there you have it. That's how you create Connect 4 in Swift and Xcode. I hope you enjoyed this game's tutorial, and I'll catch you guys in the next tutorial.